Hello, and welcome to another edition of the One Hood Power Hour. It's a lot happening today, and so I am so thankful for you all tuning in and joining us on this Monday, June 27th. There's a lot happening, and so first we just want to talk, about what happened over the weekend. We know on Friday the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade, and so later on in the program we're going to have a conversation with Planned Parenthood CEO Sydney Etheridge and incoming board president Dr. Cheryl Hall-Russell. But before we get to that conversation, a lot of stuff is happening here in Pennsylvania and around the nation. So first, we are in the final hours as we get to the budget deadline. So here in Pennsylvania, we have until June 30th to pass a budget here in Pennsylvania. So we don't, quote unquote, go on into, shut down procedures here in Pennsylvania. The legislature and the governor have to work together to come to an agreement. The Senate is in negotiations right now with not only the governor, but both parties. And we have over $15 billion of a surplus that we are negotiating over here in Pennsylvania. So you remember a couple of shows ago, we had Nick from We the People come on and talk about a people's budget and the request to have $2 billion of that 15 go to invest in community resources and improvements. And so we're going to see for the next couple of days what, if any, changes are going to be made. Again, some of the things that have to go through and be supported by the Pennsylvania legislature or, is local infrastructure outside of what the federal infrastructure covers. Funding for education, funding for senior citizen homes, funding for programming, after school programs, food programs. And so there's a lot of things that people are debating over. Again, with the change to Roe v. Wade, there's an ongoing conversation about that additional funding and what that means for here in Pennsylvania. And so some of the sticking points that people are arguing over, of course, is education funding, funding for returning citizens, funding for housing vouchers and programs. There's a couple of bills to have funding to help landlords and homeowners improve their homes. And so there's a lot of things that happen. And right now, they have until the 30th. Today, the Senate announced that they were actually closing and canceling the session because they haven't been able to come to an agreement. And so as there is deadlock in Harrisburg, we may be facing a reality that come June 30th, we may not have a working budget for Pennsylvanians. So you need to make sure you're paying attention, calling your elected officials, and getting them to really, really come together and pass a budget. Because again, unlike many other areas, even with inflation happening, Pennsylvania does have a surplus of over $15 billion that can be used to not only help Pennsylvanians now, but later on down the road. And so it's one thing you want to be paying attention to is the upcoming budget sessions. Another thing is here today in Pittsburgh, Mayor Gainey had a press conference where he actually advocated not only for gun control measures, he called logical gun control measures, but he also advocated for cities to have the power to make their own decisions and have that power removed from the legislature. So here in Pennsylvania and the Commonwealth, the state legislature actually is in charge of a lot of things that control cities and counties because based on population, Pittsburgh and Philadelphia are second class cities. And so no city in Pennsylvania is really able to make its own rules around gun legislation and regulation. It is solely a power held at the state legislature. And today, during the press conference, Mayor Gainey talked about wanting to have logical gun control measures, and having that power reside within local mayors so that they're able to respond to issues that impact their cities that may not be happening in other areas. And this, of course, is coming behind conversations about safety and community investment, as gun violence has hit here in Pittsburgh as it has in other places. And there's one way that the Gainey administration would like to stop and curb some of this gun violence is by doing various gun control methods and efforts. Of course, as the Supreme Court just recently ruled the other week, that gun control has to be regulated and weighed against the right to self-defense and the right to defend oneself once they leave the home. There's ongoing conversations about what gun safety, gun control, and gun regulation really means and how it can impact or disrupt cycles of violence. So that's, again, another conversation that you want to stay tuned for, because that will be another long battle that's going to be decided in the courts, because again, that power right now in Pennsylvania solely rests with the legislature. In addition to that, here in Pennsylvania, there is an ongoing conversation with our elected officials, because Pennsylvania is one of these places where you do not have to live and reside to run for office. And so there's ongoing conversations about residency requirements for people in Senate and in Congress. In addition, ongoing conversation around how much funding can be put into campaigns, because campaign finance is also different here in Pennsylvania and some other states. And so, again, a lot of stuff that's happening on the local level is also happening on the national level. And when we're talking on the national level, also don't want to forget things that are happening internationally. We know that over the weekend there was an immigration crisis. Be in between Morocco and the Spanish border that saw over 20 African migrants get shot down by police forces as the migrants attempted to seek refuge and solace. And so we also want to be thinking about our immigration and reforms, not only as they happen here, but as they happen overseas, because a lot of these inflation and gas prices is not only causing disruptions here locally, but also abroad. And you're going to be seeing more of that as the war between Ukraine and Russia continues. There is, of course, the battle over resources and that is coming down to gas prices and gasoline as this war rages on. So you want to also be understanding that what happens internationally does impact us on the local level. And as people are working towards peace in the region, understand that there is some opportunity locally for gas prices to either increase or decrease. There is an ongoing movement to waive the gas tax so that gas can become more affordable. There's also a movement following what Governor Newsom did in California, is to give people another stimulus package to offset the rising cost of gas. So things are changing all around the nation. And so as everyone is trying to prepare themselves to deal with the last few rulings from the Supreme Court, their session is going to end this Wednesday, and there are expected to be a few more rulings around, environments and regulation. Today, Another ruling they came out basically saying that teachers are allowed to lead religious prayers and moments while on school property, while engaging in school activities. So, and this comes after the Supreme Court ruled last week that federal funding dollars can go to private religious institutions. So the long held precedent of separation of church and state is being narrowed. So there's a lot of things that are changing with this ongoing Roberts Court that we want to pay attention to. And so, as all of these things are changing, people are still being impacted. And so, our first guest, Abu Edwards, who is the political action chair of the Philadelphia branch of the NAACP and a voting rights activist and organizer, as well as an anti-violence organizer, has been really on the ground trying to not only organize and galvanize people around voting, but around community responses to ensure that their rights are supported and codified. And so we want to welcome to the program our first guest, Abu Edwards. Welcome to the Power Hour, Abu.
Thank you so much, Dr. Miracle. I truly appreciate you bringing me and inviting me. And it's an honor to be on your show today.
Thank you so much. And like I said, you have been like really, really busy, like organizing and galvanizing people. We've had a bunch of these Supreme Court decisions come out. On top of that, we have the crisis of what our Pennsylvania budget is going to be. So, what are some of the things that you're hearing, like on as you're talking to people about the issues that impact them?
I mean, a few things is, the Roe versus Wade, was a wake up call for a lot of us. And I kind of feel like, it didn't catch us sleeping. But I think along the way, with our ancestors and the older generation, we've kind of had a disconnect because this decision should have never happened. And, when I say that our vote is more important now than it's ever been in our life, like there are attacks to roll back the times, back to where our grandparents were fighting to roll the times forward. And we have to make sure that we all step up and we get it and we fight. We can't be out there talking about gun violence. We can't be out there talking about the lack of education. We can't be out there talking about adulthood literacy, illiteracy, and childhood literacy. We have to be out there. All this connects back to voting, because if we don't show up on the polls every 6 months when we're supposed to vote, then we're also missing the opportunity to make our voice heard and to make government truly works for us. With the state of Pennsylvania and looking at the incarcerated brothers and sisters across this state, I believe that Pennsylvania represents like 11.9% of African Americans, but also represent more than 52% of the prison population. That's a problem. When we talk about our kids not graduating and third graders, 70% of third graders in Philadelphia can't read at their average, that's a problem. If you don't think that those 70% of third graders who can't read and write and we're not giving resources to, you don't think that they're going to end up incarcerated, they're going to end up shooting in public, they're going to end up, running in people's houses. We have to make sure that we are stepping up to these issues, but we also have to make sure that we're stepping up with these to these issues with our vote in our hands and casting our vote. There's a reason while there's amendments and constitution amendments to allow black people from voting. We've seen it over and over and over again. Black people, especially black women, have saved this country over and over and over again. And it's up to black men who are the missing demographic, not just in Pennsylvania, but throughout the country. It's up to as black men as well for us to step up and for us to get out there and for us to vote in record numbers, not just during the presidential, but every 6 months. You know, we have to understand that everything that goes on in our life when it comes to these issues, we have to take it to the poll. Well, it's issues like Roe versus Wade, where it's like we're fighting and we're mad. But if we were coming out, in record numbers, and if we were demanding that our elected officials listen to us, then I don't think that we would have gotten to this point. We would have never elected Donald Trump if Black people, especially a lot of Black men, would have stepped up and said, okay, we're going to vote. Every 6 months there's a very important election, and we've saw through this country, especially with this case, is that judges do matter. Judges do matter now in the state of Pennsylvania. And I just want to make it clear, the state of Pennsylvania is a safe state for abortions, but that can change next year if we don't show up to the polls in November. Women can get their voices taken away in Pennsylvania if we don't show up to the polls in November. And that's what we have to understand. It's important that we're knocking on our doors to our grandparents. We're going to our neighbors. We're getting those young people. We're creating opportunities to engage those young people, to show them and connect to them about the issues that they're dealing with in their communities, and why going to the polls on election day. And also why the history shows that Black people have fought and that's fought and died and got killed just to register, just to march across the Edmonds Bridge, just to have their voices heard on election day, so that they know that even if their circumstances right now wouldn't change, that they were making the difference for the circumstances of the future to change. And that's what we have to understand. We may not see the change right now, but we have to come together and start building it so that our change will be in the next few years or the few months. We can't have, like, now is, Roe versus Wade. Are we gonna have, are we gonna have, was it the was it I just totally forgot. We just have to be very mindful, and understand that our eyes have to be open. We have to talk to each other. We have to love each other, and we have to mobilize, with each other, because this is just one step of a small group of people in America who think that they can just run this entire country. And time after time after time, Black people have came to the rescue to this country, have voted in record numbers, and still in 2022, there are a group of people who are trying to put barriers up for people of color to prevent them from voting. In 2020, when we had the early rise of the pandemic, Black people came out and voted in record numbers. People were sick, parents was dying, but people still got up and they still went to the polls. And you can't stop that. When Dr. King died, and when we look at our leaders like Dr. King and Malcolm X, one thing they didn't understand is that they can take our leaders, but they can't stop the movement. And that's important for our work, is the fact that we can go the day or tomorrow, but the work is going to remain the same, and it's going to be passed on from generations to generations. And we can't lose this momentum of organizing and bringing our people. We cannot continue to be quiet. We cannot continue to make fun or laugh or make comic out of what is going on in our country. We have to understand that as Black people, we are being attacked. And as the millennial generation, the largest voting Black generation in the country, we can literally wake up today or tomorrow and decide that we want to change this world. We can 10% of our voting block can vote every 6 months, and we can put a governor in our governor's mansion. We can put a good legislator who care about issues like education and fighting gun violence. We can put a mayor in a city, who cares about the young people and the youth and providing opportunities. That's what our vote is going to do. And even though we feel like our vote don't matter, at least look at your neighborhood. Look at the young person who who may not have a mattress to go to sleep at night, who are parents who's working 2 or 3 jobs, who can't even go and pick up their child's report card. That they're single parents. And that's the reason why our vote is going to be more important, especially going into this November election, because even right now they passed legislation in the state house. It passed through the House, and now it's going through the Senate. The gubernatorial candidate Mastriano introduced a poll worker bill, meaning that now poll workers you have to literally, in order to be a poll worker in your county, you have to live in your county. He introduced legislation where technically anybody who's registered to vote in the whole entire county and the state can go to any county and be a poll worker. And if you don't think that's a problem, that's going to open the door for intimidation tactics. White folks, and we've heard it all the time, white folks pulling up in pickup trucks and going into communities. And I'll be honest, if you haven't seen it, I've seen it in this past election in the Northeast. And I can just imagine folks coming from Western PA, the center of the state, to come to Philadelphia, to come to Allegheny County and have poll workers. who don't look like us, who are not from our communities, and literally guiding us in low-key intimidation tactics to tell us who we should be voting for. And that's why it's important that everybody, One Hood is awesome. It's an excellent organization. Join it, become a part of it, but also become a part of your active NAACP chapter. Those are important. We're one of the oldest civil rights organizations in the country, the oldest civil rights organization in the country. And as we are building and, kind of like bringing the older generation and the younger generation, we have the opportunity to really continue the legacy of fighting for the rights of Black and brown people, and fighting and fighting against disfranchising of voters. So this is something that I take personal, and this is something that voting ties into all of our core issues that we're fighting for every day on the front line. If we don't come out to vote, we cannot change gun laws. If we don't come out to vote, we cannot demand that our elected officials understand the issues. If we don't vote, then we can't send nobody to Harrisburg, to the governor's office, to the mayor's office, to city council, who want to include making sure that people who are incarcerated and who are eligible to vote have the opportunity to vote. Those are the leaders that we need to be pushing up. If you are eligible and have the opportunity to vote, we need leaders who understand that voting is important. Where if like you're a student and you are in a Pennsylvania state school, there should be an easy way for you to automatically register to vote, and not miss that opportunity just because you leave one county or the other, or you go away. We have to have, real solutions about, gun prevention. In Philadelphia and Allegheny County, those two cities, alone sways Pennsylvania, and and the majority of those two cities are predominantly Black. So it's like, Philadelphia and Allegheny County, we have the power to sway the next governor. We have the power to really work together and put good elected officials in office. We have the power and the capacity to cross this state and to educate Black and brown voters on why it's important. I understand why Black and brown voters don't want to vote, because every time we ask for something, we don't get it. It's like we're always fighting, fighting, and fighting. But at the end of the day, we have to keep fighting. If our ancestors were here now, if you think this was fighting, I just can imagine what they were going through. And, I just always think about, when they were marching and when they were going to those countertops and when they were being turned around, when they were standing in long lines, at the polling location, when they were, marching and fighting for issues and getting sprayed and getting spit on and getting kicked and getting punched. Like, it makes me every day wake up and say, Abu, I can do this work even more. Abu, there's
Thank you.
work to be done. Abu, don't let these folks, bother, get in the way of you trying to, to get to the next level. So
Yeah, I really appreciate that. And as you're doing the work, you're also out on filling, you're organizing, and you understand that it's not everyone has the right to vote, and not everyone can vote. So, can you also talk about some of the work that you're doing for your community, neighbor to neighbor, around activating people to kind of respond not only to the ongoing violence, but also to continue the supports from like the lack of the COVID-19 response?
said you broke out. I can't hear you, Miracle. I'm sorry. You broke
Yes,
up.
I was saying, can you also talk about some of the organizing work you're doing in the community in response to public safety, and having community support each other outside of the voting?
So what we're doing is, building coalitions, bringing, like I said, bringing different grassroots coalitions together and coming up with strategies. What we're doing is that every Saturday we're launching a canvas operation with the NAACP, where we're actually going to the doors in Philadelphia and knocking on the doors and coordinating efforts with gun prevention organizations, the Philadelphia Police Department, where they have a youth program, our fire department, where they have a youth program. We're connecting with our unions with our apprenticeship. So the goal is really for us to go to these neighborhoods and to kind of do a canvassing operation, and to not just knock on doors and say, hey, it is good for you to vote, but hey, do you have young people in your household? What about these opportunities? Is somebody struggling? We have to make sure that we're meeting people where they are and bringing resources to their table. We're also going into some of these states and these counties. I'm sorry, and we're also, with another organization I'm working with, Our Vote is Local. We also are going into organizations and helping provide grants and money and financial support to help build capacities, because we all know that if we focus on gun violence prevention, then we automatically focus on voting rights, right? If we focus on, supporting community initiatives, we're focusing on voting rights. So, it's literally, and I tell people all the time, like, every day we're trying to come up with new solutions on how to combat gun violence and how to increase the voter turnout. So, like I said, we're launching our Saturday day of actions. What we're also doing with our jail voting coalition, as we're continuing to building it, we're, like I said, meeting with One Hood, we're meeting with Penn Franchise, we're meeting with the Prison Society, League of Women Voters, and other organizations, where we're going to have that day of action, where we're going to have voter registrations in every county jail, and giving those folks the opportunity to vote. We're also going to be working with PA Youth Votes, where they're going to be going inside the schools and registering students to vote, but also getting information and talking to students on what they want to see done in their community and how can they be a part, in civic engagement, and tying them to community organizations, that meet their that meets their standards, or something that they want to volunteer to. So there's just a lot of good work that's going around, not just in Philadelphia, but through the state of the Commonwealth.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. And there's a lot of, like you said, a lot of great work that people are doing. For people who want to support you to get involved with either the Philly branch of the NAACP, or your Action Network, how do they get in contact with you?
If you are interested in following Millennials in Action, which is I'm a co-founder of an organization that I co-founded 6 years ago to engage urban Black millennials to get involved in the political process. We've been running campaigns, doing canvassing, endorsing our own elected officials who actually care about urban Black millennials. We hire returning citizens and urban Black millennials between the ages of 18 to 40. One thing that I am very proud of about my organization is that we literally came up with a a strategy to turn literally drug dealers into organizers. And I think folks don't want to talk about it, but drug dealers are some of the best organizers there is. And we took we took my brother for an example, and that's really consistent of like canvassing, come out the door and knock with me. And once they get involved in that and they understand that, listen, like, this is a good way, I want to do something positive, then we literally get them in, we train them. And now a lot of those folks who came through Millions in Action are running statewide programs, granting money to other nonprofits, because we truly care. We understand that, the millennial demographic is the largest, block. But when we always talk about the millennial word, it's always used as white millennials. So we created a Black millennial pack, the first Black millennial pack in the state of Pennsylvania, to literally just focus on mobilizing urban Black millennials, especially specializing in organizing Black men. So if you want to follow us on social media, it's MIA_PAC. Facebook is Millennials in Action. My personal Instagram is IamPhilly_215. If you guys are interested in joining the NAACP of Philadelphia, please reach out at infophilly NAACPbranch.org. And we have 15 committees focusing on voter registration, focusing on gun violence prevention, prison, economics, labor, and 7 other committees. So feel free to reach out. And if there's anything I can do, please reach out to Miracle or myself. And I look forward to working with you guys, getting out the vote. And hopefully in November, we can look back and see all the great things that we've done together.
All right, thank you so much. Abu Edwards, the Political Action Chair of the NAACP Philly branch, the co-founder of Millennials in Action, and the grassroots organizer, extraordinaire. I hope you are safe on the rest, of your travels, and thank you so much for joining us. And so again, what Abu was talking about is ways that you're able to, some of the organizations are not only building voting blocks and coalitions, but using that canvassing as a resource, not only to help people and give them resources, but also job opportunities that traditionally would not be there, and people look at our community. So as people are now galvanized to go back and start organizing, the understanding that how you uplift your community and build your community is showing up and being there. And talking about, showing up and being there, since Friday, a lot of people have been trying to wrestle with how they show up for abortion rights, reproductive justice. And so we reached out to Planned Parenthood, which is to a lot of people like the organization of the face of abortion, but it's very important to understand that more organizations besides Planned Parenthood actually carry out abortions. And he wanted to reach out to the Planned Parenthood of Southwestern PA because, like Abu said, abortion rights are still codified here in Pennsylvania. But there's a lot of things that went into Friday's decisions, a lot of fear that people have, and a lot of misinformation, as long as a historical a narrative and precedent and reality that has caused some people to have a negative impact of reproductive justice. And so we wanted to just talk about what Friday's decision means going forward. And so, welcome to the program, Planned Parenthood of Southwestern PA CEO Sydney Etheridge and upcoming board president Dr. Cheryl Hall-Russell. Welcome you both to the Power Hour.
Hello.
Hi.
It's good to see you, Miracle. You're going to have to, Sydney's going to be pulling my coattail if I start getting political. But your boy had me fired up and about to say something I had no business saying. So I'm going to put on my Planned Parenthood hat.
Yeah, that's why I love Abu. Like, he will get you, like, what, let me put all these dots together. I really appreciate that. But first of all, Dr. Russell, thank you so much for joining us. You shared on social media. You're on the the latter end of COVID. So I really thank you so much for coming out, and as you're still trying to heal. So I really appreciate for you for joining us. But first, I'm gonna go to you, Sydney. What a way to start your your first 6 months. You moved here to Pittsburgh, trying to expand reproductive justice in here in southwestern Pennsylvania, and then Roe happens. Can you just talk a little bit about Planned Parenthood's response and what you want people to know about abortion rights here in Pennsylvania?
Yeah, well, thank you so much for having me. It's so exciting to be here, coming back to the city of Pittsburgh and getting to be involved in this kind of way. So as you had mentioned, I moved here in January, and prior to coming here, I was with the Planned Parenthood National Office for about 10 years. And so knowing that this decision was coming was something that was very top of mind for me when I was interviewing, and kind of the second I came on board, on top of learning like where the printers were and everything, I was really focused on figuring out what we could do to begin preparing for this moment, knowing that 6 months, 6 years probably wouldn't have been enough time, but what could we do in these 6 months to really help bolster our staff and make sure that we were going to be able to see patients when this decision came out. And so that's really been my focus since coming on board. And, when we had the leak happen in May, as someone who came from DC, seeing a leak like that was just so surprising, because the Supreme Court, like, nothing gets leaked from there. So that was really fascinating to see. But it really did help us prepare for the worst case scenario, which ended up actually being our reality, since the leak draft opinion didn't change much from the final decision. And so, once we had that, and once we kind of knew that was what we had to really start preparing for, just continuing to work with our staff and kind of the abortion landscape and ecosystem here in Western Pennsylvania, but really across the state and the region, to figuring out how we could really prepare for this potential surge. Because the number one and the most important thing for people listening and watching should know is that abortion is still legal in Pennsylvania, and we're going to do everything we can to keep it that way. And so I think since that leak came out, we were just super energized to figure out what could we do for our patients currently, but what are we going to have to do for the future, knowing that this is going to be a very long fight.
Absolutely.
Thank you for that. And coming to you, Dr. Russell, you were talking about, this being a true violation, this overturning of Roe, but that
Mhm.
the board is galvanized like to fight. Can you talk about some of the things that you'll be in charge of as board president? I know you don't start until July, so again,
3 days and
you know, a feat to start. But can you just talk
yeah.
about some of the things like you're hoping to accomplish as this whole fight now is going to be reinvigorated here in Pennsylvania?
Yeah, I mean, what a wild time, right? Coming in as a new chair, I almost felt guilty. I was part of helping to bring Sydney here, and I was like, oh man, did we bring you at a time to? But what we thought about when we really thought about this when we brought her here was it was going to have to be somebody that was going to be strong enough to be able to deal with this because we knew the threat to Roe was real. And so coming in as the board chair, I'm delighted to have a CEO that's this strong. But we weren't sitting still. And the time leading up to this decision, we were already talking about and what's next. This is our current political situation here. Here, we know that we are still going to have abortions available to those who choose that option, because it is their option as women to make that choice for themselves. But we also know the states around us are going to be changing dramatically. What does that lead up look like? How are we going to be ready to take on more traffic? So this is a kind of planning and discussion work that we've been doing for probably close to 2 years. We've been talking about this. So hurt, devastated. There's a whole lot of things that I can say. But what I won't say is that we weren't ready. We still don't know exactly, Miracle, what this is going to look like. Because it's just unfolding so quickly. But this board is fully prepared. We've been meeting, we have been building relationships, and we are very supportive of the staff. Part of this will be, and Sydney will speak to this, is really increasing staff. We've got some position openings that we need to fill, and those people who feel passionate about this work, we welcome you to look at the positions we have available. Because we're not going to work in a panic. We're going to work in a strategic kind of way that shows consistent services and a continuum of services for the women that we care about. All women, not the women we care about. I don't mean to narrow that, but for women who are seeking our services.
Thank you for that. And again, you're talking about, the staff who's been inundated with phone calls and visits and, threats. And so we know that your safety is also, the utmost priority. That's why we didn't tag your personal social media accounts. Can you also just talk about some of how you're dealing and navigating the safety aspects of this? Because we know Pennsylvania still being a safe city. I just say Pennsylvania is real. And so we still deal with the reality that there are people who are armed and violent who threaten all of us, for the work that we do. So you just talk about like how you're making sure that you and your staff are staying safe.
Yeah, no, that's a great question and something that's really top of mind, especially for when you take a look at Planned Parenthood of Western Pennsylvania and then you see Allegheny Reproductive Health Center. We are both the two independent providers in the Western Pennsylvania Allegheny County region, and we are both run by people of color. And so not only are we thinking just about, what does this mean for increased protests with the Roe decision, but we're also just in a reality now where us two being could make us a target, and also our staff and patients. And so security is something that has been top of mind for me, being a part of the Planned Parenthood family for so long. I understand kind of the infrastructure that the national office and a lot of our affiliates have around security for both their staff, patients, and supporters, volunteers, and things like that. So really being in constant contact and tapping into that network and making sure that we are safe and that we're doing everything we can, whether that's, checking online threats and things like that, all the way to just making sure that our dumpster is locked behind our building, because those things are so important. And so that's really something that we are always focused on doing. And it was funny because actually on Friday I was meeting with some people from the PPFA security team when the decision came out, and we were talking. They were like, okay, we all have to go, but always in contact, not just with them, but also with the city of Pittsburgh, which have been just really so supportive when I came on board, met with members of the police, with like the regional FBI units. And we really just briefed on a number of different things like anti-abortion extremists and also white supremacy. And so just feeling very supported right now at this time, because like I want to be out there and I want to be talking about this. And so, just really making sure that we're doing that in a safe way so it doesn't bring harm to me, but most importantly to the clinics and the staff. And so, really putting that top of mind.
Thank you for that. And you talked about meeting with some of the different entities. One strategy people have been organizing is asking not only district attorneys, but local police chiefs to agree not to enforce any type of arrest or prosecution of people who are seeking abortions or people who are providing abortions. Is that something that the board is thinking about doing or has been doing, Dr. Hall-Russell?
We have not really dug deeply into that particular conversation just because of where we are. It's not an issue for our clients at this point. Now, it could be for those who are traveling. And I noticed, my brain just went dead. This is one of the things with COVID. My memory is sucking this past week. But there was some conversation about our city county council just kind of protecting those people who are coming to our clinics and to making sure that the police are not kind of escalating situations where sometimes it sounds like we're talking about runaway slaves and patty rollers and states. It's crazy as it sounds. Boy, you escape to another state and go and get that one. And this is how crazy the conversation sounds to me right now. That we're talking about having to protect women who are having to migrate from other states to come and take care of their bodies. This is women's health, and we are talking about how to protect them from policing and everything else from other states. And so, I do hope that it was Bobby Wilson, I think, whose account I was looking at today, that they really do pass something that ensures that we are safeguarding, that we don't become the police of women who are trying to ensure that they are having healthy experiences with healthcare. And I really hope we are able to partner with the city police and with our leadership here, with the mayor and others, to ensure that we don't become those people who are hunting down women seeking good health care.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. Because I think it's very important for people who are seeking healthcare and access to abortions that they know that they're safe, their privacy is safe, and their freedom is safe. And Dr. Cheryl stole a little bit of our thunder, but like she mentioned, Sydney, tomorrow there's going to be a conversation about some of the legislation that's being proposed that would do some things such as prevent people from being arrested and prosecuted for providing abortions and services to people who come here in Southwestern PA. Can you just talk a little bit about what your hope is for the legislation? I know you're a nonpartisan C3, but can you just talk about why it's so important that we have people discussing this and what some of the other states that don't have this protection are facing?
Yeah, I think why things like this are so important is because we know at times like this, it's just the level of communication that patients or potential patients are getting is incredibly confusing just to access the base service. And then when you start layering discussions around kind of criminal charges or being arrested for seeking this type of care, it really just continues to instill fear in patients. And this is all just used as a tactic and form of oppression, kind of like Dr. Cheryl had mentioned, that this is just a way to kind of continue to oppress and strike fear in people. And so it's really important that we as advocates are being really clear about what we want to see here and what's happening, and educating people on, yes, you can still come here, you can still come to Planned Parenthood, you can still come to Western Pennsylvania for these services, but also it's really important that we see people in positions of power step up at these moments and really start making decisions and kind of putting a flag in the ground about the values that so many of them have talked about or we have heard about. And so this is really exciting for me to be in the city at this time and have this type of support. So really looking forward to the conversation and events tomorrow.
Thank you so much.
This
Go
isn't
ahead.
just a Planned Parenthood fight. I mean, Planned Parenthood is centered because we are providing those health services. But I think, you know, the decision has made that really clear. The partners that we will need in order to kind of get some of these rights back, and you know, what do we look like minus a Roe v. Wade? And so again, we're big into the middle of it, but there are a lot of reproductive justice organizations. There are a lot of people who are passionate about this topic. And it's kind of a hands-on deck, all hands on deck moment for not just our community, but nationally. And what I'm hopeful for, and I don't know that this will happen, I hope that this extremeness of this reality check will get people moving in a way that they've not moved before, in terms of ensuring that our rights are really held in place, and that women's safety, because we're living in a region where, you know, the health of Black women is already questionable. And those of us, you know, you've seen the statistics of Miracle. We've talked about them over and over again. This is yet something else, as we talk in particular about Black women, that is going to impact our health in very negative ways if we don't have access. Because what we do know about what was happening before Roe v. Wade is people were getting abortions before Roe v. Wade, and they will continue to get them without. And we know enough now to know that many were dying and sick, and all kinds of things were happening to them as a result of doing it in non-legal ways. And so we have no intention of allowing people to have to return into that kind of crazy world. And so hopefully people are fired up enough that this has the opposite effect of what was intended, and that it brings our movement together in a way that we've never seen.
Thank you so much for that. And you talked about Planned Parenthood's not the only organization that does abortions, but we know one of the reasons people believe that is because that's been some of the disinformation to take away reproductive freedoms, especially given some of the more controversial beliefs of the founder, Margaret Sanger. So can you talk about, as you are two Black women who are in this position, fighting for, you know, abortion as healthcare, particularly for Black women and Black people, what does it mean to come into an organization that has this legacy? And how are you trying to not only educate people about the legacy, but use that as a way to make sure that people have healthcare that works for them, that's with informed consent, and that's done in a reproductive justice way? I'll come first to you, Sydney, and then to you, Dr. Russell.
Yeah, thanks for this question. I mean, I think it is just so important. Since my time starting at the Planned Parenthood National Office, I think this has just been something that's always just sat with me about being a part of an organization that can be so polarizing, particularly in the Black community. And what does that mean as a Black woman in this space? But I think first and foremost, it's so important to know that, you know, even though getting to step in this role as a Black woman, as an organization, there is so much more work that Planned Parenthood of Western Pennsylvania and Planned Parenthood across the network needs to be doing to really meet this moment at where it needs to be, in particular when we're talking about like other reproductive justice organizations and our partnership with them. And so coming here to Pittsburgh and getting to kind of step into a region that has such an exciting reproductive justice movement with organizations like New Voices and with so many leaders in the community. I really am here because of all of them. So getting to really learn is something that is so top of mind for me, and really educate and humble myself about what this work needs to look like as we think about how can Planned Parenthood of Western Pennsylvania meet this moment, because that is what Margaret Sanger did not do. And we need to pick that up, and we need to make sure that we are meeting the moment where it's at, and that we understand and believe every single patient and person in this country that is of value and should be able to be in control of their own body. And so that is the work we are picking up in partnership and learning so much from our RJ partners. It just is such a time where we kind of have to band together. And so this learning is kind of happening at an accelerated rate, but everyone has been so open. And so I'm so appreciative of the Western Pennsylvania community and just the community at large as we start these conversations and really look to rebuild.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, of course, this came up, when I joined the board 6 years ago. I wasn't unaware of that history, but I also was very aware of where we are now in the modern Planned Parenthood. I also was aware of the fact that, and for me, at the time when I made the decision to come on, 30% of the patients being treated by Planned Parenthood looked like me. And I wanted to be a part of the organization that set the strategies and the goals, looked at how we were engaging intersectionally with our healthcare. That was a part of the voice, a part of the decision making, a part of the awareness. I wanted to bring everything I knew into this, and with an understanding of what that history was. But just standing on the outside of that wasn't something. When I was asked to come in to be a part of it, I was very willing to do that because I know that we treat a lot of different people from a lot of different backgrounds, and I needed them to be represented on this board. And so, yeah, I didn't hesitate, 6 years ago when it's been that long, somewhere in there since I came on board, but it's been a minute, and there has been no hint of that, but there is space for growth on a national basis. And even, I think part of me, and I'm sure my board members will share this, is I am that person. And there are other voices with me of awareness about how we do navigate this space intersectionally, what our history has been and who we want to be. So we're not shying away from any of that conversation at all, Miracle. We've just taken it on, and I think we're the better for it. I'm very proud to come into this position.
Yeah, I think that, as some people say, what institution hasn't been impacted by white supremacy? But I also say that just means you have that burden to change that narrative and change the reality. So I'm very thankful and grateful that both of you have taken on these roles. And can you just talk a little bit about how people can support the organizations? What other organizations need a support, whether it's donations, people to volunteer as escorts, because a lot of people just want to do something, but they don't know what to do. So you just talk a little bit. First, you, Sydney, and then you, Doctor, how people can support.
Yeah, well, we, on our website, you can go to ppwp.org and we have our Get Involved tab. And it has all kinds of information about volunteering, about how you can kind of donate, all of that stuff. But in particular, I do want to plug our Vivian Campbell Fund and then the Western Pennsylvania Fund for Choice. Both of those are funds that can help women cover abortion services if they need the cost kind of reduced or they need it covered. So we just want to make sure that any patient who needs abortion services can access that without having to worry about that financial burden. So if people want to donate to there, it means just so much to us and our partners at Allegheny Repro who are in this fight.
Yeah, I mean, there could be some strain on our own budgets. And so, the fundraising is important. I saw somebody say the other day, well, this happened and they're using this as a fundraiser. No, we're using this as a reality check. We will need more funds to do the work that we need to do. And I am shameless about asking for donations and to ensure that women can safely come there and not fear the fees or anything like that. We want to make sure that they're okay. We do need to raise money to ensure that our security is good. I mean, we're okay right now, but this is going to be an issue that's going to get bigger. And so, I do ask that people consider gifts to Planned Parenthood, ongoing gifts, and being generous to this movement and to other reproductive health organizations and reproductive justice organizations. They all need the support that we can give them now as we coalesce together. That I hate to sound like I'm overstating the need for these community input and togetherness around this, but this is a true time that we have to kind of step around these kind of barriers that get set up around philanthropy, who's getting what, and all of that. We need to figure this out as a community and then as a nation. But right now, our focus, of course, is Southwest PA, and we are definitely focused in on ensuring that we're okay, and the women that come to us are okay.
I know you're getting people from Ohio and the Virginias, and so there is a huge need. Do people need to show up to to escort people back and forth. He talked about some of the positions that you're hiring for. We know because like safety and security, that's not always just like publicized for people who are doing this work, or for providers from places like Ohio and West Virginia who now aren't able to do their jobs. How do they get in contact with you all to get hired so they can come to Pennsylvania and help continue abortion healthcare access?
Yeah, on our website there, we have all of our job postings. Like Cheryl mentioned, we have our healthcare assistants we're looking for. And so really just the support staff as well, but also always looking for clinicians and providers. And you can also find there ways to escort, and you'll be connected with our volunteer coordinator, who I think like started like 2 weeks before the leak. And so she has just been inundated with volunteers, but has really been building out an amazing program. So if people want to work directly with patients, they can. If they want to support in other ways, they can. If they want to like do admin work, because like Cheryl said, we are like an organization. Like sometimes we have things that like, you know, we need to file things and shred things, or we have people who like we need help all across. So, you know, so if people are like, I don't want to deal with patients, or I don't want to be on the medical side, we have something for you if you want to come in and help. And so that is all on our website, and people can feel free to reach out, because we wouldn't turn away someone interested in volunteering or supporting and helping our patients.
Yeah. Uh-oh, we can't hear you, Miracle.
Oh, sorry. Perfect. Well, thank you both. So much for joining us on this evening. Again, thank you for the work that you're doing. We hope you feel better, Dr. Hall-Russell. So you can
2 more days. I'm gonna take another test and watch out, world. I'm back. I did miss the event. We had a picnic on Saturday to kind of welcome. It had already been set up to welcome Sydney to the community, but it ended up being a lot deeper. And unfortunately, I missed that. But I want to thank everybody who came out for that too and showed their support and of the organization. And for One Hood, we want to be your partners as well, because there's so much messaging that needs to get out across our community about this work. Blowing up myths like we blew up COVID myths. I want to be a part of blowing up myths around Planned Parenthood too, and just who we're here for, and we're here for everyone.
Perfect. Well, thank you both so much. I hope you have a great evening.
All right,
thank you.
You take care.
And so that has been, this Monday's edition of the Power Hour. And we know that a lot of people are still, wrestling with what's happening and with what's to come. And so we wanted just to talk a little bit about what people can do to mobilize and organize their communities, but also want to talk about the realities that face people who are seeking abortions, and the history that is connected to the reproductive justice and abortion movement, because you can't really fight for something if you're not always honest about like the good and the bad of something. And so I wanted to again thank so much to Dr. Cheryl Hall-Russell and Sydney Etheridge for like coming on and having that like honest conversation. And there's so much more to talk about, so much more to engage, and we'll be having more of those conversations and discussions, because we want to ensure that people have informed consent. We realized since Friday, a lot of people didn't really know what abortions were, didn't even know the rules and regulations about abortions. And so there's a lot of misinformation, disinformation about this topic. And it's very controversial, and it's very, polarizing for a lot of folks. But we want to just have a clear, honest conversation about abortion, about different things that are impacting our communities. And we're still going to have even more conversations. Some conversations we have coming up are going to be about gun violence and gun control. What does that mean for Black people? We're going to be talking about what does it mean for returning citizens as they come back into community. Outside of voting, what options and opportunities are there for organizing in mutual aid? So there are going to be a lot more intensive conversations and calls to actions in the coming weeks and months. And there really is no topic that we are going to ignore or shy away from. And so I want to thank you all for tuning into this edition of the One Hood Power Hour. We know COVID-19 is really on the rise here in Allegheny County. So you have seen, some little staff changes here or there because of that. And so you want to just send healing wishes to all of those who are impacted by COVID-19 right now. Just remind people to wear your mask, wash your hands, practice your social distancing if you can. You can still get vaccinated or even boosted if you would like. But there's a lot of opportunities out there to make sure that you are being as healthy and as safe as possible, and to make sure that you're able to have a safer summer. There's a lot of opportunities coming up with One Hood and One Hood Power. So our media network is expanding and having a lot of great conversations that we'll be announcing soon. So I hope you all have a safe Monday. If you are eligible to vote and you're someone who is engaged in electoral politics, we encourage you to register to vote for the November election. We encourage you to pay attention to what's going on in Pennsylvania. But if you're someone who's not eligible to vote or someone who is disenfranchised with voting, we still encourage you to get involved in the community, whether it's mentoring, organizing, mutual aid. As we say, we keep each other safe, and there's room for all of us in this movement. And with that, my name is Miracle Jones. I hope you all have a great night. Thank you so much for tuning into this week's edition of the One Hood Power Hour.